Today we're going to talk about the elephant in the room, the big bad wolf at the door, tariffs. Now, before we dive into this too deeply, I'm going to make this very, very clear. I am not an economist. I am not an expert in tariffs and shipping and these sorts of things, but I do think that there is some speculation that can be done here and some information that can be passed along that I think will be, if not beneficial, maybe at least interesting. You guys may remember a few months back when OnePlus announced the OnePlus Watch 3. Quite a few people actually got their hands on this watch before a very strange thing was noticed. There is actually an error on the back of this watch. This might be hard to see from this, but instead of saying made in China, it says MEDA in China. So that is a typo. So what did OnePlus do? Well, they did exactly what you would expect them to do. They offered people with the typo version of the watch a free replacement, although I think I would just keep the one that I had because I think that makes it a bit quirky and maybe a collector's item down the line. But they did offer to swap it out for people, and then they delayed the launch of the watch so that they could print, or I guess fix, I don't know how they'd go about this, but basically get their inventory ready to ship this thing without the MEDA in China error. Well, it is now April, and the OnePlus Watch 3 is now available for sale once again, but something rather strange has happened. Something rather strange has come along with this reappearance of the OnePlus Watch 3. When this watch was announced, and in fact initially sold, it was $329. As you can see now, it is an eye-watering $499. We have seen a 51% price increase since launch in February, I believe it was February, to now in April. Now, OnePlus has not come out and explicitly stated the reason why their watch went from $329 to $499, but I think we can make some pretty safe assumptions that it's going to be due to those tariffs. If we go to the European version of the store, it is £269. Let's convert that. At the current moment, that puts us at $351. Of course, their taxes are already included, $329 plus a tax being added on to that. You're right in that range. So the UK version, price has not moved. It's just the US version that has added a massive amount to it. That's not a coincidence. It's the tariffs. Now, rather than getting into the nitty-gritty and talking about what tariff is on what country and what the percentage is, look, we know full well that these numbers are changing almost every single day. We are currently, the United States, I'm speaking obviously, we are on a pause, a 90-day pause of the tariffs, but the pause isn't really a pause because there are still, I guess, 10% tariffs on most countries in the world still. I don't want to get into this nitty-gritty because all this is going to do is it's going to create political arguments in the comments down below, which I'm actually very much interested in avoiding. So let's just speak more broadly about this, and we can do this by talking about how it's already impacting some companies. Here's a tweet from Framework. They have actually now pulled some of their lower-end model laptops from their store, and the reason they gave was because they priced their laptops, you can see in this tweet, when tariffs on things being imported from Taiwan were 0%. At 10%, they say, we would have to sell the lowest-end SKUs or SKUs at a loss. Other consumer goods makers have performed the same calculations and taken the same actions, though most have not been open about it. So they're basically just straight up saying, with this 10% pause tariff in place, our laptops would have to be sold at a loss or we would have to jack up the prices. So they're just not even selling it anymore. And Razer, a big laptop maker, is going down the same path. Razer pauses direct laptop sales in the US as new tariffs loom. With new tariffs set to kick in tonight, Razer's new Blade 16 and the laptops are no longer available to purchase directly. They're just saying, never mind, we just won't sell in the US anymore. And then this one's a big bummer for me as well. Eric Mijakovsky, who is behind the recent revival of the Pebble line of watches, he tweeted this the other day when initially the White House was announcing 104% additional tariffs on China. And it's actually, I believe it went up after that as well. This little meme looks like I picked the wrong week to get back into manufacturing hardware in China. They're pre-ordering, or the pre-orders are open for the new Pebbles at $149. That's where they are starting. I mean, if he has to raise the price of these Pebble watches, that wouldn't be shocking, but it's going to hurt. If we take the same 51% increase OnePlus just had to do on their watch, that would make the base model Pebble $224. Like I said here, it's hard to imagine that selling particularly well. This is going to have big impacts. And unfortunately for Eric, he's already taken quite a few pre-orders at $149, and these products have not shipped yet. So he's got to be sitting there hoping that for these American customers, that by the time his product is ready to ship in, I think it's June or July, that something has happened with these tariffs, or he's going to end up losing a lot of money unless he preemptively raises the price. If we rewind the clock a little bit back to when we were still just reacting to rumors about the Oppo Find N5, and we were still expecting this device to land in the United States and some other regions as the OnePlus Open 2, one of the things that kind of started circulating when we found out that the Open 2 would not be coming was the idea that that was happening because of OnePlus's fear around tariffs. The thought was they were hearing that these tariffs were going to be coming, although I doubt that they were expecting them to be well in excess of 100% on China. But I digress. They were hearing rumors that these tariffs were going to be enacted. And because of that, they did the math and they said, hey, it just doesn't really make sense to launch the Open 2 in the region that's going to be doing these tariffs. But the problem with that is it doesn't really fully explain the behavior, right? They could have still launched the Open 2 in the regions other than the United States. And it also doesn't explain Oppo's behavior because they only launched the Find N5 basically in some Asian markets. So they pulled back. Oppo pulled back on their foldables. OnePlus pulled all the way back on their foldables. They do say that they're going to make another foldable down the line. But again, tariffs, I don't think adequately explain that behavior. But if we want to kind of do the thought exercise anyways, we can do that. So let's imagine that the Find N5 did launch at basically the same price as the OnePlus Open 2 in the United States. So when the Find N5 launched, the price would have converted to about $1,870. Like I keep saying, everything is in flux. Let's just roll with that number because it's ballpark going to be correct. If you take that same 51% increase, that is now a $2,800 device. That is horrific. That's absolutely awful. If you say, well, maybe the Open 2 would have been the same $1,699 that the original Open was, and in fact, it was actually often on sale for closer to $1,400. But let's just say that it was $1,699. Well, now it's a $2,500 device. It's better, but it still is way, 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 way too expensive. The point I'm making here is that if you're hoping for a OnePlus Open 2 with the Oppo Find N6 or whatever it might be, if there's a 51% markup that's going to need to be done in order for them to turn a profit on it, I would not be hoping for that to happen because it's going to be prohibitively expensive and they're probably just not going to bother. Again, 51% is what they did to the watch. We're guesstimating. We don't know what the profit margins are on the foldable, so maybe the markup would be smaller. Maybe it would be bigger. We don't know. We're just sort of fudging these numbers to get a broad general idea. So don't give me any hate in the comments. I know what I'm doing. The general point of this video is that we are beginning to see the dents, the scratches, the dings, the impacts from these tariff policies. And if you are a consumer of tech in the United States, you should absolutely be bracing for that impact. Be prepared for higher prices and higher prices that are only in this region. We may very well see instances where some devices, Pixels and Galaxy devices and iPhones maybe, are more expensive in the United States by a fairly significant margin than they are in other countries. And importing them from those other countries to circumvent that higher price is only going to result in you being charged an importing fee from the shipper, and so you end up in the same place. Anyways, we are already starting to see that as well. Go on Reddit and you're going to find instances of people importing devices like the Oppo Find N5 from stores like Wanda Mobile. And what's happening is DHL is telling them, hey, before we deliver this, we have to collect this tariff, this fee that could be $300-$400. I think if anybody is telling you that they know exactly what's going to happen next and how this is going to go, I think that that person is probably either mistaken or they are lying. What I will tell you is just be prepared for impacts, because I think that is absolutely clearly what's going to be happening. Guys, thanks for watching. If you want to help support the channel a bit more directly, click that join button down below to help make me a little bit less reliant upon Google's ad revenue policies, which are increasingly difficult to understand as time goes by. Subscribe for more content just like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.